When you think about it, the CRM and all these solutions that are out there, the core of all of them is the data. That's the core of all of them. We used to look at a CRM as your data. Think the way the future is unfolding is probably not going to be that way anymore. I don't think we're going to have CRMs as we've known them in the past.
I'm used to just saying, hey, Vincent, how you doing? Wait a minute, there's someone else here today. Who would we want to have as our first guest? It's Tim, the icon. I'm very blessed to call him a friend, mentor, you name it. Vince, why don't you give Tim a little introduction?
In 1991, while most of us were still figuring out how to use a fax machine, Tim Musch was in his family's remodeling business in central Wisconsin and accidentally created what became maybe the world's first CRM system. You've told us that you pretty much just bought a Macintosh, taught yourself how to program it, and then from there, that journey began and started impacting thousands of home improvement businesses with MarketSharp. After 26 years of building MarketSharp as a CRM, it's probably used by over 40% of the industry. Now Tim is part of Paradigm Bendo. Tim, do you remember those first 3 lines of code that made the computer beep when you bought that Macintosh?
I do, Vincent. Some of you might remember that the 1984 Super Bowl was the home for probably one of the most iconic TV commercials in history. And what was the introduction of the Macintosh computer? At that point, I was in the window replacement business on the retail side. So for about the next 3 years, this computer thing bounced around in my head, didn't really act on it. But then I finally got to the point where I reflected back on that ad and said, you know what? I'm going to get one of those things and see if it can help us in our business. So I went down to the local Apple store and bought a little 9-inch Macintosh computer. Here's a picture.
Oh my gosh, props.
Yes. And that computer cost $3,400. And what I bought it to help me with creating ads. See, back then, the way you got leads is yellow pages and TV or newspaper advertising. So I had a program called PageMaker and used it to create some ads. But to your point, Vincent, it also had a programming language built in.
Was it HyperCard?
It certainly was HyperCard.
Wow.
A little scripting language. And I was a little curious, so it had a tutorial that came with the computer, and it said, type in on mouse up, and I did. Then it said hit return, which I did. Then it typed the word beep, hit return, then typed the words end mouse up. And I looked at those 3 lines of code, and I said to myself, I think I know what might happen if I click this mouse. And sure enough, I clicked it, and the darn computer beeped. And I went, oh my gosh, is this easy? And then I typed the words on line 2, generate leads, and then end mouse up. Click the mouse, it said, I don't have any idea what you're talking about. So, it was worth a shot. The cool part is, with today's world, we're not far away from that kind of stuff.
That's true.
But really what went on after that is I said, you know what? I'm going to fiddle more with this and try to create some things that help us in our business. So long story short, I spent the next 3 to 4 years messing with this. I spent that time and yes, created what I guess now is known as a CRM. Didn't realize it when I put it together, but I laid it out where it had 3 sections: prospects, leads, and customers, and it had all sorts of things in between to help manage the business. One day, a window supplier came in and said, "What's that?" And I said, "Well, that box there you're looking at is a computer." And he says, "What does that do?" So I showed him. He says, "Oh my gosh, I've never seen anything like that." He said, "Would you show my boss this?" I went, "I guess." So up to Minneapolis, I go to this window manufacturer, showed his boss, and his boss said, "Hey, I got a dealer meeting coming up. You want to show this to those guys?" And I went, "Okay." So up to Minneapolis, I go to a hotel that currently is in the area where there's a parking lot for the Mall of America. And there were about 120 people in the room. I was in front of that room, not with this big old projector and all that, with this 9-inch Macintosh computer. And I was talking to these guys about this thing I created. And I think most of them thought I was from Mars, but 8 of them raised their hand at the end and said, "Can I have one of those?" And I went, "Well, I guess." So that's how it got started. And what's interesting, the first training we did with those first 8 people, and by the way, a lot of those 8 companies are still in business doing fantastic. But the first training I did was in a hotel. None of them had computers, so we had to rent a U-Haul trailer to haul all these computers and laser printers up to this group. Got in a room, we're ready to roll, we're excited, and all of a sudden one of them in the crowd picks up this and says, "What's that?" And I went, "Oh, this is going to be fun.
It's going to be a long day, yeah.
A long day." So we played video poker for about 2 hours.
Okay.
I'm used to the mouse. And that's kind of the genesis. Now, one more thing I would like to mention about this. Throughout that period of creating this thing that evolved and turned into MarketSharp, I had some help. I got a hold of a cassette tape series back then called Time Out. That was done by a gentleman by the name of Richard Kaler. Richard was the founder and the brains behind Certified Contractors Network. This dude was a genius. And he had these cassette tapes that talked about things I'd never heard in this business. And hence that provided a lot of the stimulation that I needed to throw into this thing called a computer to help people get better at their business. So yeah, that's how it started.
Everyone can understand that building something for other people is really hard. Building something for yourself is a lot easier because all you have to do is worry about what your opinion is. If you take us back to the early 90s, I can't imagine it was easy. You had to U-Haul a bunch of computers and teach people how to use a mouse. We have the liberties today of a lot of people understanding what a computer is. The interesting parallel is that the new generation coming in is just using iPads and they don't even know what a mouse is too.
That's funny. That's good. You're right. Let me say this. Even at the later years when I was at MarketSharp, the reality was, and Chris, you can probably relate to this, being with Improvement 360 for years, reality was the average company used the software, maybe used 20% of what it had in it. And you go, what the heck?
Well, it's hard to get beyond that because everyone's busy. So, we always tried to push having that champion, who could really take ownership, but it's tough. They've got other things they're trying to do. That was always a big challenge.
What I finally concluded is, after years and years of doing training sessions and webinars, that level of usage creeped up a little bit, but never got to the point where I thought, man, this is really doing a great job for people. What I'm encouraged about as we go forward from 2025 on is the technology that we have now can help take away some of the human element that's critical to get that kind of adoption. Because that was a lot of the problem, is you got humans involved. And you got to rely on them to do this. You're gonna get a lot of cases where it just doesn't happen. One thing we did really early on in the 90s to help generate leads is we would help people buy these prospect lists for lead generation. We bought the prospect list. We bought the list with latitude and longitude coordinates. Back then, people didn't understand what that was about. But then I went to a guy and said, hey, is there any way to take latitude and longitude and make a determination where exactly that is in relation to a address? And he came back with a formula about that long and said, yeah. And I thought, gosh, let's help them do radius marketing.
Radius marketing. Yeah, there you go.
So we had postcard templates they put in their laser printer, and this overprinted the message. We had people going, wow, that's pretty cool. Not really AI as we know it now, but certainly something that was done by a computer that to do it with a human wouldn't be able to be done.
And that was smart because it's a way to really weave in something that they were familiar with this new technology.
You're right. They didn't have any mechanisms to follow up on leads or leverage their past customers. A lot of it was done by direct mail and back telemarketing. The program had built-in dialers in it. We had all sorts of things in there to help them follow up on unsold leads with either direct mail or phone calls, past customer promotions, and all that kind of stuff. It's nothing earth-shattering when we think today about it, but back then, nobody was doing this stuff because they would have to do it manually.
Was there any competition?
Vincent, you mentioned maybe we created here one of the first things that we now know as a CRM. Possibly true. The only thing I knew of back then that was on the market that was similar wasn't called a CRM. It was a program called ACT.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I remember that.
What that was is a contact management program. And essentially the way they positioned that is like an electronic Rolodex. What we did went a little bit beyond that because it had all sorts of marketing elements built in.
Right.
But one thing I did learn pretty early in talking to the users and the early adopters and all that is how important reports were. That's something I didn't really think of when I originally created this. So I was able to latch on to some extensions to this thing called HyperCard that could really pull data out of there very nicely and do all the reports, a lot of the reports we still use today.
Now, thinking about the industry at that point too, right now, we talk about the size of companies, enormous. It's amazing. What do you think? There probably weren't many $5 or $10 million companies at that time.
You're exactly right. These guys were all just fragmented little companies scattered all over, with a couple exceptions. As we got up in the years a little bit, I noticed, and this is one of the first ones I noticed that was truly scaling the business and growing it, is 1-800. There weren't many of those back then. So those companies like 1-800-Hanson's, they grabbed onto technology early, and frankly, that's what allowed them to scale. And it's so exciting to see what's going on now with these companies that are technology powered, scaling like crazy and growing to $100 million in a few short years. It's just amazing.
Billion-dollar companies, it's amazing. And part of it is the explosion of point solutions. A lot of it was because the CRMs didn't do everything that you wanted it to do at that point. People would say, well, why didn't you just add this to MarketSharp? It's not that easy.
No, something that seems very easy to some user of MarketSharp will call in and say, man, you got a lot of good stuff in here, but how did you ever forget this? Something they were asking us to do was nothing to it in their mind, but to integrate it in what you had built thus far.
It's much different. When Brewer 360 ran into that, and then we became brothers through EverCommerce, which is one of the greatest days of my life. Tim and I could stop faking that we hated each other and could actually truly be friends, because we competed for years and we're at all these events together trying to pretend we didn't like each other. And it was going mobile at that point. It's really interesting to see how all these other point solutions evolved. Heat came out, and then all the others, Hatch and Company Cam.
Over the years, we would do some seminars on the software and all that, and people would invariably ask things like, what's coming? What's next on the agenda? And I would joke with them and I would say, we're creating a new version out shortly. It's going to have one little button in the middle of the screen, and you know what that button's going to say? Print money. And everybody said, I'm in.
Yeah.
Well, we never quite got there. But what's exciting to me is the technology available now in AI is bringing us closer and closer and closer to that. It really is. I just think that's important.
Something we're seeing with the emergence of AI, there could be a flattening of the market where a lot more could be included in your platform software, which used to be your CRM, traditionally. There are a lot of point solutions out there. How do you fight that battle of point solution fatigue in the marketplace today?
That's exactly what's going on. I had this conversation with about 5 people in the last 2 days. You go to these industry events and you look at all the vendors there that all have their solutions. Every single one of them is useful. Every single one of them has an ROI. But I think what a lot of the people out there, a lot of the dealers, contractors, whatever you call them, you mentioned the word fatigue. They're getting fatigued with a couple things. First off, the cost of some of this is getting to be a lot of money when you do this one, that one, all doing these individual things. The cost is something. But maybe more of an issue, they all say, yeah, we integrate with that. You go, awesome. Only to find out, the integration is kind of there.
We've known for years. The word integration is really left open to interpretation.
Yeah.
I mean, when you say, we integrate with that, it could mean, like with, QuickBooks, it was a good example. You pass one shield over. Yes, we integrate. I think it's been one of the biggest myths over the past decade, probably, is saying we integrate with something. And it's really challenging.
When you think about it, the CRM and all these solutions that are out there, the core of all of them is the data. Mm-hmm. That's the core of all of them. Certainly back in the past, we used to look at a CRM as your data. Well, I think the way the future is unfolding is probably not going to be that way anymore. I don't think we're going to have CRMs as we've known them in the past. I think they're going to take a different look, but they're still going to be reliant on the data. I think the companies that really are next in line to make a big impact are the companies that figure out how to take this meaningful data and make it available to people in an extremely intuitive way, and also a way that, as I mentioned before, takes a lot of the human element out of it. Now, the one caution I have with AI and the challenge I have as we use it in like marketing and things such as that, I think we all got to be careful that the personalization aspect of the customer experience is still present, because that's what home improvement buyers in 2025 are looking for. They said 2 things: digital experience Okay, I think we all know that. And a personalized experience. So we got to keep that in mind as we go forward.
What sets our, the companies that we work with apart is the people, the personality, the branding, how they follow through, the reputation, things like that are really critical to success. And part of the reason some of these bigger companies have continued to explode, they've taken that very, very serious, and they've done a great job maintaining it.
If you don't mind, how about a couple questions for you guys?
You can ask Vince questions, can't ask me anything.
All right.
Ask Vince all you want.
Well, one question for you before I get to Vince. Did you win at pickleball last night, Chris? Oh, there we go.
Yeah, come on. Dominate.
A lot of people don't know this about you, but you are Superman. If you agree that the data is the core, and when I first met you, Vincent and Albert, before Chris was involved, I was just intrigued with you guys. I loved what you were thinking. I loved the direction you were going. And things you were saying to me, I thought, oh my gosh, if these guys can pull this off, this is what's next. So I'd love to get an update on that. Where you guys, what you see the future look like.
Generally, what I've seen is the industry is continuing to become more sophisticated. It's growing. And I think the big thing here is you've mentioned this, that people are the most valuable asset for home improvement businesses, but data is the second most valuable asset. When you're smaller, there's not that much data to work with, and the estimator, Paradigm Vendo, can really be the one tool that helps you be able to sell to the homeowner in a much more professional capacity. You just got to follow the process. But we're seeing in the largest of businesses these growing data demands, because they're acquiring more businesses, more brands, they're launching new markets. What we're seeing on the ground is that these large companies no longer want to be constrained by their CRM or ERP. CRMs were built for humans to work in, and they're great workflow tools, and they'll continue to exist. There's nothing wrong with the existing tools. Like you're saying, all of them bring a lot of value. But at the same time, now you have more tools, for example, like Zero Orilla or Engage and all these other tools that go along in this sales process of closing the homeowner. What people really want is the ability to have better visibility across all the different data sources. How do you really collect all that data in one place? How do you get that out of the CRM and out of all the surrounding tools that matter within the industry and put that into one place? And that enables these contractors to now ask important questions about their business that used to be more of this kind of drop-down menu, export this into Excel, and then you go to this other tool, and then maybe the vendor doesn't have reporting capabilities. So then you email the vendor, like, hey, I really want to extract this kind of information out. Do you guys have that for me? And then the vendor might upgrade you to a new package in order to get that. It used to be this whole song and dance to be able to get all this data. But I think a lot of contractors have solved this with middleware like Zapier, where it's like, all right, I'm going to use this thing to connect this to that, but the integrations are kind of iffy. They're kind of shallow.
They're limited.
We're right now focused on how do you bring sales visibility into this cohesive package where people really understand the full journey of what happened. And when they look into what happened, they can drill down through just plain English, because it used to be that you have to go to someone more sophisticated in data analysis to be able to extract
now
all
you know
that.
why Rise brought me on board. I'm basically the guinea pig. So they want to come up with a system where even I can get the answers that we need.
You know, Vincent, you just mentioned something that caught my attention. When I think back to the story I told you in the first program I wrote that said on mouse up, beep, and mouse up, I'm sure nobody listening to this is familiar with HyperCard that I created this in, but that's what it was. It was English. It wasn't a bunch of geeky code. Otherwise, I would not have been able to do it at all. And I'm thinking to myself, my gosh, that's why we're trying to get back to here.
Yeah, you're right.
We're trying to get...
Well, and you touched on it earlier. You said the print money button, which would be great, but really the UI can be as simple as that. I mean, how many spreadsheets have you seen over the years in this business? They're exporting things and then reworking them and rebuilding them. We've worked with a few companies on this already, and we're trying to save people time and give them faster insight so they can make decisions now instead of next Wednesday. Because for the companies the size they are now, that can be tens of thousands of dollars by making a marketing change a few days earlier. It's a huge difference.
You're right. And what's interesting is if you would ask somebody, what's this going to look like in 5 years? I don't think anybody can tell us, because it's just evolving so fast. But as you guys continue to be creative and innovate, do not forget the customer. My concern is you create tools that might be great for the company, but you might leave out the customer. The organization that deals with both those things is going to be the winner here.
Yeah, I totally agree. I actually think the fundamentals of the business never really needed software to begin with. Software just helps them be a lot more coordinated and organized, which then produces larger companies. I think in a lot of these business leaders' heads, they know how to print money. They know how to press that button. There's a process that they have to follow. The big thing here is how do you take care of all the busy work that generally people didn't sign up for. You know, your salespeople, they just want to sell, close the customer, and move on to the next home. And it's the same case with people in the back office. They don't want to be data entry clerks. They want to be thinking about the strategy of the business, what special campaigns you could be doing to differentiate yourself, and replacing functions that were already being outsourced to somewhere outside of the US.
One more question. Thinking of AI, name the top 3 things right now companies that want to grow and scale can do. Let me start you off and you can take it from there. When you think about the sales, marketing, and the production process, let's start on the lead gen. I got to believe that AI can help a lot with doing things for you that can make sure your marketing dollars are pointed to the best potential prospects.
Yeah, let's say you get a bunch of cost reports from lead aggregators. Might come through, they might have an API connection, different Excel spreadsheets they send you, PDFs, emails even, right? The AI can process all of them and roll them up into your reporting. You could hire someone to scrape all this information for you and constantly do it. But I think AI can roll up all that cost data as fast as the data comes in. Going downstream from marketing is where we see the most opportunity, certainly from that call center perspective, where the general technology here for everyone to understand is you have a call that turns into a transcript. Those are just words, and AI is really good at sifting through conversation and identifying the key parts they should be focusing in on when it comes to training their reps. Beyond that, it's customer communication. So lifecycle marketing, where it's drip campaigns, follow-ups, rehash, all these things where it's really just text messages. There's a lot of opportunity there to help figure out which conversations to prioritize and what are the actual issues. Going beyond that, there's assigning the sales rep to the right opportunities, monitoring the dashboard and figuring out when numbers look funky. And on the production side, there's a lot of data entry that people don't do, that AI can fill in the gaps so no one drops the ball on that
That
end.
solves the adoption problem. Well, that's where we started.
Yeah, well, it's exciting what we have on the horizon here. And as we continue to strive to get to that ultimate point of having the aid of technology, because better in our business and more efficient, things like that, it's truly exciting. I'm really excited about what you guys are doing. I got a hold of this book here.
Yeah.
Before. Is it number 1 on the bestseller list? I can't remember.
Yeah, it's.
Let me ask you a question.
I think it just passed Brian Gottlieb, but he's making.
That's right. So anyway, I don't know if you can tell people how to get their hands on this, but this is very useful.
We have a couple of ways we have it available. Go ahead.
Tim, what did you think
I
about it?
thought it was great. I'm a novice at AI, and I think a lot of people out there might feel the same way. You know, hear things here and there. Maybe you fiddle with ChatGPT, but do you have this vision of how this works in your life? The book definitely can help you along those lines in many ways. So I would highly recommend it. I do work with Paradigm Bendo, and that's a quoting tool, and we're excited about AI too. We think the future is really about using things like AI to help prospects and customers get farther down their buyer's path to purchase before an engagement with the company or the salesperson. That's what they want, and that's what we need to provide. Visualization is going to play a huge part in the future of selling home improvements. Paradigm and Builders First Source are hell-bent on digitizing the new construction and remodeling parts of the business. We're excited about that, as well as extraordinarily excited about what you guys are doing. I've mentioned that before. Gosh, I appreciate the time. This was fun. I appreciate the time today.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate it. Thank you for being such a great friend to Rise, to me personally, of course.
We'll see you at QR Top 500 Live would be
Top
my
500,
guess.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Excellent.
Great.
Tim, Just to close this out, if I'm a contractor and I'm watching this, who do you feel in the industry today are folks that they should be asking for help from?
Certainly, one of the obvious answers is you folks at Rise. You understand this stuff, love everything you've learned thus far in a very short period of time. Other sources that have a vision for this is our friend Paul Burleson. I think he's a great source for this stuff and can point people in the right direction. And if you don't know Paul, you need to. And that's where going to some of these live events will make that possible for you, because Paul's...
We were saying yesterday, we don't think Paul misses one.
No, he's omnipresent.
Even if you don't go to these events, he'll somehow find you.
Yeah.
You don't.
Paul is actually a guy that works for a company called Westlake Royal Building Products. But what I love about Paul is he works for Westlake and does a great job for them, but he's like agnostic with who he'll spend time with. Doesn't matter what you do, Paul will spend time with you. So I think he's a great source as well. He's definitely an ambassador for the things we talked about here today.
Yeah. All right, Tim, thanks so much.
Love you, Tim. Thanks, man.
My pleasure. Take care.